Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
Imagine if there was a ritual that could summon a vengeful spirit from a mirror in the middle of the night. A legend that whispers about hidden horrors ready to terrorize anyone brave enough to admit it. Tonight, we will dive into the mystery and horror behind the story Bloody Mary, a story about courage, fear, and the boundaries between the real world and the spirit world. Are you brave enough to hear the end of this story? In a small village far from the hustle and bustle of the city, there is a legend that never dies, passed on by word of mouth. The legend is about Bloody Mary, a female ghost who is said to be summoned through a mirror at night. Many consider it just a story to scare children, but tonight, 3 teenagers wanted to test their own courage. Dinda, Rena, and Anton, 3 curious friends, decide to try summoning Bloody Mary. They gathered at Dinda's house at night when her parents were not at home.
Are you sure you want to do it? It's just a game, right?
This is just a legend, Din. Let's just prove that this is all a lie.
I don't know, guys. I heard from my cousin. There are people who have tried it and never returned.
But despite their fears, they all agreed to continue. They entered a narrow and gloomy bathroom. A large mirror hung on the wall, its surface dull, as if it had not been cleaned for a long time. Dinda lit a candle, and the dim orange light illuminated their tense faces.
Okay, everyone ready? Remember, we only have to say it 3 times.
The 3 of them stood in front of the mirror. The air in the bathroom felt colder than usual, even though their hearts started beating faster. No one wanted to appear afraid.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
Suddenly, the candle they were holding flickered and almost went out. The temperature in the room is getting colder. Dinda felt the hairs on the back of her neck bristle. The atmosphere became silent, so quiet that they could hear their own hearts beating.
You guys feel this too, right? Why is it suddenly so cold?
In the mirror, a woman's figure vaguely appeared. His face was pale. His eyes were bright red, and his long, tangled hair covered most of his face. The figure stared at them hatefully, as if it had been waiting all this time.
Look at that. In the mirror.
Anton, who initially didn't believe it, is now lying down. The figure moved, getting closer from inside the mirror. Rena tried to hold Dinda's arm, but her hand felt cold and shaking.
We have to go. Get out of here quickly.
Anton tried to find the light switch, but his hands were shaking too much. The candle that Dinda was holding fell to the floor, and in an instant, the room became completely dark. There was only the sound of their panicked breathing and other sounds, gasps that weren't theirs.
Where are you? Dinda, Rena.
The light finally came back on, clearing the room, but there was only Anton there, standing alone in front of the cracked mirror. There was no sign of Dinda or Rena. The mirror hanging on the wall now looked like fragments of bad memories. Anton stepped out of the bathroom with a pale face, telling anyone who would listen, but no one believed it. They said that Dinda and Rena probably ran away because they were afraid. But Anton knew. He knew what he saw that night. Since then, Anton has never approached a mirror at night. He knew Bloody Mary was still there, waiting. And every time he passed a mirror, he felt something cold, something lurking in the shadows, ready to take him to a world where Dinda and Rena might already be. The legend of Bloody Mary lives on, serving as a warning to anyone who dares to mess with the unseen. No one tries to explore anymore because they know once you explore, it will come and never leave. Mirrors are windows, and behind those windows, something may be waiting. Be careful. Don't call him if you're not ready to face undying hatred. Anton could never forget that night. Even though he tried to cover up his fear, every image and every mirror always made his heart beat fast. He even covered all the mirrors in his house with cloth, afraid to see the reflection of anything other than himself. But the calm didn't last long. Several weeks after the incident, Anton began to feel that something had changed. He often heard whispers when he was alone, a faint whisper, calling his name in a cold, scary voice. Initially, Anton thought it was just his own hallucinations due to trauma, but the whispers became more frequent and more real. One night, as he was trying to sleep, he heard the whispers again, this time closer. Anton opened his eyes and looked at the corner of the room. There was a dark shadow, a shadow that was slowly moving closer to him.
No, this can't be real.
Anton felt his body stiff, unable to move. The shadow got closer and closer until finally he saw a very familiar face, Rena's face. Rena's eyes looked empty, her cheeks were pale, and her mouth was whispering something.
Anton, help me. Anton, help me.
Anton closed his eyes, trying to convince himself that this was just a bad dream. But when he opened his eyes again, Rena's figure was gone, and there was only an eerie silence. Anton tried to calm down, but in his heart he knew something was wrong, something that hasn't gone away since that night in the bathroom. In the morning, Anton decided to go to the next village, looking for someone who could help. There is a story about an old shaman who could exorcise evil spirits. Anton felt this was the only way to get his life back to normal. You have paved the way for him to return. Bloody Mary is a vengeful spirit, and once you find her, she will never go away easily.
Help me, please bring them back. Dinda and Rena, they disappeared because of me.
The old shaman looked at Anton sympathetically. He handed me a small mirror that looked old and worn. This mirror is the key. He will appear again, and this time you have to dare to look him directly. You have to show that you are not afraid. If you show fear, he will win, and you will never escape him. Anton took the mirror, his hands shaking. The next night, with a heart full of fear, but also determination, Anton lit a candle and stood in front of a small mirror. He knew this was his last chance to free himself and possibly his two friends. Anton, with a trembling voice, looked into the small mirror. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
I'm not afraid of you. You won't take me. Not again.
Bloody Mary's figure seemed shaken, her face scrunched up as if she was suffering. Suddenly, the small mirror shattered into tiny fragments, and the figure disappeared, like smoke blown away by the wind. Anton fell to his knees, tired and afraid. The surrounding atmosphere returned to calm. The cold air slowly became warm, and Anton felt a heavy burden lifted from his shoulders. He cried, not only because the fear was gone, but also because of the feeling of relief. He knew that he had faced his fears head-on and won, but in his heart, he still felt lost. Dinda and Rena never returned. They are lost, perhaps forever, in the world where Bloody Mary originated. Anton knew that this was the end of his worst nightmare, but also the beginning of something new. The legend of Bloody Mary may no longer haunt Huenea, but the mirror and reflection will always be a reminder of that night, the night everything changed. Even though Bloody Mary no longer appears in his mirror, Anton knows that the legend still exists, waiting to be summoned by those reckless enough, stupid enough, to test it again. Anton returned to the village with a heavy heart and strong determination. Every step toward the village reminded him of the bad memories that seemed to haunt every corner of the street. That night, he arrived in a quiet village with shadowy hills and towering trees, as if nature was hiding its own secrets. Anton headed for the old shaman's house, a hut on the edge of the village surrounded by lush trees. When he knocked on the door, the sound of footsteps could be heard approaching. The door opened, and the old shaman's face greeted him with wary eyes.
I have to save them, Mom. Dinda and Rena, they are still there, trapped. I can't just leave them like that.
The old shaman nodded slowly, then invited Anton to come in. In the room, the shaman lit several candles and placed potions around the large mirror in the center of the room.
Bloody Mary is a spirit that fulfills revenge. He is trapped between our world and a world where his suffering never ends. To save your friends, you must enter their world. You must face them head on.
Enter the world of Bloody Mary. How can I come back again?
There are no guarantees, kid. The world is a place where spirits are trapped with their suffering and bad memories. But if you manage to open his eyes and call your friend's name, you can free him. You have to be brave, because your fear is the weapon he uses against you.
The old shaman gave Anton a different mirror, one with a worn wooden frame and engraved with strange symbols. He also recommended a blood-red herb.
This is the calling mirror, and this potion will reveal what is hidden. When you drink it, this mirror will become a door to his world. Remember, Anton, do not let go of this mirror, because only this can bring you back.
Anton nodded with determination, then sat in front of the large mirror. With trembling hands, he opened the potion bottle and drank it. It tasted bitter, cold, like ice water flowing down his throat. Gradually, the surrounding space began to fade, as if a thick fog was swallowing everything. The mirror in front of him shook, and suddenly he saw that he was no longer in the old shaman's room. Anton found himself in a dark and cold place. The air around him felt heavy, as if the entire room was filled with moving shadows. He could hear faint whispers, sounds of pain coming from all directions.
Dinda? Rena? I'm here. I'll find you.
He stepped slowly, holding the beckoning mirror tightly. Every step took him deeper into darkness. In the distance, he saw a flash of light, and there stood two familiar figures, Dinda and Rena. They looked disheveled, with empty, unrecognizable eyes. Anton approached them, but suddenly the air around him became colder. Behind his two friends, Bloody Mary appeared, his face filled with hatred and vengeance. He smiled, a cold smile that made Anton's heart stop beating.
You're back, Anton. You need dare to challenge me again.
I'm not afraid of you. Dinda, Rena, listen to me. I'm here to free you.
Dinda and Rena seemed to be starting to react, their eyes slowly showing signs of awareness. But Bloody Mary did not remain silent. He moved quickly, trying to get closer to Anton. His hand stretched out as if he wanted to snatch him into darkness forever. Anton held up the beckoning mirror, staring at the figure of Bloody Mary in it. He saw his face full of anger, but this time, Anton didn't feel afraid. He remembered what the old shaman had said, that fear was the Bloody Mary weapon. With strong determination, Anton called the names of his two friends.
Dinda! Rena! You have to believe me. Follow this light.
To be precise, the mirror in Anton's hand began to shine. The light was bright and warm. The light slowly covered Dinda and Rena, as if pulling them from Bloody Mary's grasp. Bloody Mary's face looked furious, and she shouted, her voice echoing throughout the darkness.
No, they are mine. You will never be free.
But the light from the mirror grew stronger, and Anton felt the grip on his hand tighten. Dinda and Rena started to move. Their eyes looked back at Anton with full awareness.
Anton, you really came.
Anton smiled, his eyes flowing. He knew that they couldn't do it without mutual trust and the strength not to give up. The light from the mirror crouched them, and in an instant, the darkness around them disappeared, replaced by a dazzling bright light. Anton opened his eyes and found himself back in the old shaman's room. He fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Next to him, Dinda and Rena lay. Their faces looked tired but full of relief. They succeeded. They're back. The old shaman looked at them with a faint smile.
You guys have passed a tough test and you managed to bring it back, Anton. But remember, spirits like Bloody Mary never really go away. You must maintain your courage, because fear can bring the darkness back.
Anton nodded, looking at his two friends, who were starting to open their eyes. He knew that the struggle wasn't completely over, but right now, they were together, and that was quite a victory. That night, under the dim moonlight, Anton, Dinda, and Rena sat together, sharing a silence that can only be understood by those who have gone through darkness. They know that Bloody Mary's shadow may still be there, lurking behind the world's mirrors. But they also know that as long as they stay together, there is nothing they can't face. Days have passed since Anton, Dinda, and Rena returned from the world of Bloody Mary. They tried to live life as usual, but the experiences there left a deep mark on them. Every night, a small fear creeps in as the lights go out and shadows appear on the walls. However, they agreed to never let fear rule them again. Anton finally moved back to the village, not because he couldn't live in the city, but because he felt that the village was the place where it all started. And only there he could truly close this dark chapter. Dinda and Rena support Anton's decision, and even though fear still haunts him, they still visit every weekend to accompany him. One full moon night, when the three of them were gathered at Anton's house, they heard a soft creaking sound from the large mirror in the living room. Anton turned his head, looked at the mirror warily. There was a flash of shadow, something that seemed to appear in the corner of his eye. Dinda, who saw the tension on Anton's face, put her hand on her friend's shoulder.
Calm down, Anton. It's just a shadow. We've already dealt with it, remember?
Anton took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. However, the more he tried, the more he felt something was wrong. Rena, who also felt the atmosphere change, got up from her seat and approached the mirror.
Maybe we should just close them. These mirrors bring back too many bad memories.
Anton nodded in agreement. He took a large piece of cloth and slowly covered the mirror. As the mirror closed, the three of them felt as if the room had become lighter, as if something had disappeared from there. They looked at each other, and for the first time since returning, they smiled genuinely, feeling a little freer. But the night wasn't over yet. Several hours later, when everyone was asleep, Anton was awakened by the sound of knocking. The knock came from inside the house. He sat on his bed, listening more carefully. The sound came from the living room, from where the mirror was. Anton felt his body tense again, but this time he knew he was not alone. He immediately got up, waking Dinda and Rena. They gathered in front of the living room door, staring at each other in silence. The knocking sounded again, and this time it was clearer.
What is that? Maybe that mirror again.
Anton was determined, trying to find courage within himself. He opened the living room door slowly, and they saw a large mirror covered with a cloth. The cloth moved, as if there was something behind it. Dinda held Anton's hand, her eyes wide with fear.
This can't go on like this. We have to get it done, once and for all.
Anton approached the mirror, feeling his heartbeat speed up. He slowly pulled back the cloth covering the mirror, and behind it, they saw something they never expected. In the mirror, there were their reflections, but their faces looked different. Pale, empty, like they saw in the world of Bloody Mary.
That's not us.
Anton looked at their reflection in the mirror, and suddenly the reflection smiled, a cold smile that reminded him of Bloody Mary. Anton felt anger mixed with fear. He knew this couldn't be allowed. They had to destroy this bond, this mirror that still held Bloody Mary's remaining power.
We have to break this mirror.
Rena and Dinda stared, hesitated, but then nodded. The three of them picked up heavy objects around them, Anton with a hammer, Dinda with a stick, and Rena with a wooden chair. They looked into the mirror, and it was as if there was a whisper begging them not to do it.
You will never be free from me.
Anton strengthened his heart. He raised the hammer and hit the mirror with a strong force. Suddenly, the mirror cracked, the sound breaking the silence of the night. Dinda and Rena followed, hitting the mirror until it broke into small pieces. Every time they hit, the image in the mirror faded, as if it was slowly disappearing from this world. When the mirror finally shattered completely, the three of them were panting, their bodies drenched in sweat. The room felt brighter, lighter, as if the burden that had been haunting them had disappeared. Anton sat on the floor, looking at the broken mirror which now no longer reflected anything but empty shards.
It's finished. It's really over.
Dinda and Rena sat next to each other. They held each other's hands, feeling true warmth and togetherness. They knew that they had defeated something much greater than just an evil spirit. They had overcome their own fear, something that had haunted them more than anything else. That night, they sat together, looking at the remains of the shattered mirror. And for the first time since their encounter with Bloody Mary, they felt free. No more chasing shadows, no more whispering voices in the night. Anton, Dinda, and Rena can finally rest in peace, knowing that Bloody Mary will no longer haunt them. They had destroyed the last ties that connected the spirit world to their world. Although the mirrors will always be a reminder of the darkness they once faced, they now know that as long as they are together, there is no fear they cannot conquer. Therefore, the legend of Bloody Mary does not end with defeat, but with courage. Yet, in the dark corners of this world, old mirrors still whisper, waiting for someone curious enough or reckless enough to call out names that should be forgotten. The legend of Bloody Mary reminds us that the greatest fear often comes from within ourselves. Courage is not being afraid, but choosing to face the darkness with confidence. Don't let fear control your life. As long as we are together, there is no darkness we cannot defeat.